The X-ray, the mistake that changed the world. Before the advent of the X-ray, medical diagnoses were very primitive in our sense of the word. When a patient came to a doctor with a broken bone, pain, or object lodged within their body, the physician used their sense of touch to investigate the problem. This was quite problematic. For broken bones, the swelling around the affected area made it difficult to diagnose, let alone correct the problem. Fingers could only probe the human body so far. When touch failed them, the physicians turned to the use of sound with a stethoscope. However, this method was also ineffective. The doctor had to create mental pictures of the inner body from the effects of sound. Because of the vast opportunities for errors, many lives were lost because the physicians were not capable of correcting the problems in time. In fact, President McKinley was assassinated at the Pan American Convention. He was shot twice. The doctors were unable to find the bullet left in his body and closed up the wound. An experimental X-ray machine, which might have helped to find the bullet, was on hand at the exhibition, but for reasons that remain unclear, it was not used. The inventor of the X-ray was Wilhelm Röntgen. He was born on March 27, in 1845, at Lennep in the Lower Rhine province of Germany. He was not a typical physicist. He never received his high school diploma. On November 8, in 1895, the 50-year-old Röntgen was working late in his lab, investigating the properties of cathode rays. Of the many tubes he was using, he was primarily concerned with his colleague Philipp Lerner's variation of the Crookes tube. He decided to repeat some of Lerner's and Hertz's experiments, hypothesizing that the rays had always penetrated the glass tube, but were previously undetected. In order to test this, he covered the tube with black cardboard in a darkened room and supplied the electric current. He had forgotten to put a screen directly in front of the tube. Nonetheless, a greenish-yellow glow appeared on a cardboard screen that was lying on a chair several feet away from the tube. The startled Röntgen was surprised to see that not only the screen was glowing, not inches, but feet away from the tube, but glowing in the shape of a letter A, which a student had written on a cardboard. In the middle of the night in December 1895, he brought his wife to his laboratory to show her exactly what had occupied his time for the past few weeks. Mrs. Röntgen placed her hand upon a photographic plate and waited while her husband turned on the machine, aimed directly at her hand. This is the picture that had come out. She immediately screamed, "It's like I can see my own back." X-rays are generated by an X-ray tube, a vacuum tube that uses a high voltage to accelerate the electrons released by a hot cathode to a high velocity. The high velocity electrons collide with the metal target, the anode, creating the X-rays. In medical X-ray tubes, the target is usually tungsten or a more crack-resistant alloy of rhenium, 5%, and tungsten, 95%, but sometimes molybdenum for more specialized applications, such as when soft X-rays are needed as in mammography. Since Röntgen's discovery that X-rays can identify bone structures, X-rays have been developed for their use in medical imaging. Radiology is a specialized field of medicine. Radiologists employ radiography and other techniques for diagnostic imaging. This is probably the most common use of X-ray technology. X-rays are especially useful in the detection of pathology, skeletal system, but are also useful for detecting some diseases procedures in soft tissue. Some notable examples are the very common chest X-ray, which can be used to identify lung diseases such as pneumonia, lung cancer, or pulmonary edema, and the abdominal X-ray, which can detect intestinal obstruction, free air, and free fluid. X-rays may also be used to detect pathology such as gallstones or kidney stones, which are often, but not always, visible. Traditional X-rays are less useful in the imaging of soft tissues, such as the brain or muscle. Imaging alternatives for soft tissue are computed axial tomography, CAT or CT scanning, magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, or ultrasound. These are some of the instruments that have been developed thanks to the X-ray technology. Since the invention of the X-ray, many changes have been made to this creation. Nowadays, hospitals all over the world use what is now known as a digital X-ray. The digital X-ray works like any other X-ray using the X-ray tubes, but now the instrument will take the picture and automatically upload it to a computer.
And then we come in here to do the X-ray. We put our cassette right into the wall bucky here. We do these are for standing, for chest, for standing spine work, for skull work. And if the patient can't stand, then we bring them over here and we put them on our table. And here we do hips, abdomens, pelvises, and sometimes we have to keep the patient in their bed and we do their X-ray right in the bed. Once we're finished with the X-ray, we take our X-ray plate and we take it back to where we ID'd it to process it.
Once the X-ray has been taken on the cassette, it is then placed on the digitizer or processor where the image is developed. Once the cassette is run through the digitizer, it then appears on our monitor where we're able to visualize the image and make sure if any corrections need to be made. We are able then to send the image itself to any of the doctors that read at the different 5 locations that we have. Once the image has been sent, we are able to print the images. That way we have hard copies that will then go to our film library to be filed in the patient's folder. It's a lot easier this way as the old way in running films to a dark room, waiting for the images to process, and the doctors now receive the images right through the system and don't have to wait for the images to come to them anymore.
Prior to the 1970s, American airports had minimal security arrangements to prevent aircraft hijackings. Measures were introduced starting in the late 1960s after several high-profile hijackings. Sky marshals were introduced in 1970, but were insufficient numbers to protect every flight, and hijackings continued to take place. Consequently, in late 1972, the Federal Aviation Administration required that all airlines begin screening passengers and their carry-on baggage by January 5, 1973. The September 11, 2001 attacks prompted even tougher regulations, such as limiting the number of and type of items passengers could carry on board aircraft, and requiring increased screening for passengers who failed to present a government-issued photo ID. Nowadays, we have what is called a full body scan. It is basically a large X-ray that can scan the whole body and determine if the person is carrying a harmful weapon that may threaten the security of our country. Thanks to the X-ray technology, we can now enforce full body scans and help increase the security of our nation. In conclusion, the X-ray is a wonderful tool that has helped us in our everyday life.